This is the Self-Aware Leader Podcast. Now your host, Jason Rigby.
What is going on, guys? Super excited today, like always, to be able to see and understand who you are as a person, as a human. What does self-awareness look like? And one of the things that I think that each and every one of us can do, and that is these mental practices, where we look at the things that may appear to be small, maybe they appear to you to be big. But for most of us, it's the small little negative thought processes that we have day in and day out that gives us compound interest and causes us to have a lid in our leadership or in our life. And like I've said before, and I've said it all the time, don't think just because it's a leadership podcast and you're like, well, I'm not a leader, I can't listen to that. Every single one of you are a leader, whether you lead your family, your children, your spouse, your partner, it does not matter. We are all leaders. So I think it's really important that we understand lids. And John Maxwell talks about this, and he has a law. He calls it the law of the lid. Like, you can only lead so much until all of a sudden, and I like to call them ULPs, upper limit problems. That's another way, and you can look that up if you want on Google. It's really, really cool to study. It's basically when things are going really well, when things are moving at a high pace, when you get in the flow, a lot of times your ego is going to turn around and say, no, I need to sabotage this. There's too much goodness. There's too much. There's too much love here. You're just going. The thermostat's too high in life. It's too good. So I need to bring it back down. So what our ego will do is self-sabotage ourselves, and it can kind of put a lid on leadership. And I want to go over these lids that John Maxwell talks about, and I think it's super important. And we all have lids. So we have to admit this. We all have upper limit problems. And it's just quick to be self-aware enough to recognize it. And then once you recognize it, then you can be like, this is my lid, or this is my ULP. That's all. I'm just acting out. And I'm going to do the first one, and one that I deal with all the time, and that is fear. Fear. And I'm pausing because I want you to think of just the word alone causes us to, think of things of insecurities that we have in our life, maybe problems in relationships, maybe, work, job, income, getting laid off, all of these things. It's so easy. We could write a list of 100 things that we're fearful of, whether they're just simple things like spiders or snakes or whatever it may be. It's so easy for our ego in our flight or fight state to focus on fear. And when you're in fear, and Apostle Paul talks about in the Bible, and I mention this a lot because I think it's so important. It's such a powerful, and whether you believe in the Bible or not, that does not matter. This is a powerful principle for us to learn in our leadership. When you operate in fear, you cannot operate in love. The opposite of fear is love. The opposite of love is fear. So where are you being fearful in your leadership? Where are you being fearful in the conversations that you're having with those that you love, with your teammates, with not just at work, but at home? When are you being fearful? And how quickly can you catch yourself that it's just a thought of fear? It's just ego trying to protect me. It's just a fight or flight. I'm not running around on the savannah getting chased by cheetahs anymore. This is just evolutionary psychology, millions of years of programming that I'm dealing with. So this fear doesn't really mean anything because why? It is not real. It's just a thought I have. The emotion of fear that's coming into me is not real. Nothing is happening in this moment but my thought on fear. So that's the first lid. Number 2 is impatience. Refusing to wait for right timing. Being logical instead of emotional. And like I said, and I've done a couple podcasts before about emotions are our advocate. They're not our judge. And this is so important when we get impatient, a lot of times the underlying emotion is anger, is fear, is wanting to seek clarity. Like, I'm super impatient. I want to find out. I'm going to go talk to my boss right now and get this shit settled. We get that mentality. And impatience, I'm going to go blow up my relationship because I think that they're cheating on me when I have absolutely no proof and they haven't. But my emotions, and I've been going crazy, and this is what's been happening, and they've been acting suspicious, blah, 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 blah. Impatience, a lot of times, is just an upper limit problem. It's just a lid to self-sabotage you. It's you wanting to react in an emotional way and believing in that emotion and then being reactive instead of proactive. And you need to take the time to catch it, be self-aware enough and say, why am I being impatient in this situation? What is the root cause of my impatience? I've had this multiple times, and I've had to look at it and say, it really is me creating a false sense of this worst case scenario. And so by me getting all emotional and building this fake story, because the story doesn't exist, but only in my mind, right? It's not real. Parts of it maybe I've gotten enough information to where my mind, but a lot of times the story is exaggerated, but it's almost impossible to think what another person's thinking. It's almost impossible to predict the future, isn't it? We have no idea. 10 years ago, would we have thought that we had gone through COVID? 10 years ago, would we have thought that we're having a banking crisis? 10 years ago, would we have thought that we would have, all the issues that we're facing right now? Not just in our personal lives, but, globally, the things that we're facing. So when you look at impatience, understand it's just a story that you're telling yourself, and that story isn't real. It's just a lid. Next is denial. This one's really big because what it'll cause you to do, especially people that may be introverted or passive aggressive, they lean towards that. They'll just go into denial mode. Like, I pretend I didn't see that. I don't want to, talk about this. And as a leader, denial is one of the worst things that you can do, because if you don't bring it up in the situation and you don't nip it in the bud now and have the conversation now and you just deny it, guess what happens? It never turns well. The problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'll give you a simple one. Somebody's late. Hey, Susan, saw you were late today. Is there anything I could help you with? You address the situation right off the bat, and at the same time, you're being compassionate. They know. They're going to be like, no, sorry, boss. I was running late. My kids, the school, da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever it may be. But they know now that you saw that and you brought it out. But if you just denied it and be like, well, I'll wait and see if it's, 3 or 4 times, this becomes a pattern. But how many times are you going to observe it? Are you going to be there right to see when they clock in or clock out? Next is impulsiveness. This is like what happens after impatience. We get impulsive and we get reckless, right? And in this recklessness, we're making decisions on the fly that are not based on any type of reality. This recklessness will cause us to do really stupid shit. I'm talking, think of how many people have died being impulsive. Oh, watch this. Those are the 2 worst words in the human language, especially when it comes to like teenage boys or 20-year-old boys. It seems like, hey, watch me pick up the snake. Watch this. Watch me do this with my bike, my motorbike. Watch me do this on the freeway, and the next thing you know, something tragic happens. This is all impulsiveness. You have to learn to control. Why am I being impulsive right now? Why am I wanting to go through the fast food driveway right now? Why am I wanting to have these donuts or ice cream? What's the real reason behind me wanting to be impulsive and use food as something to make me feel better when I know it's not in the end? It's only hurting me. So impulsive things are dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's reckless. And it can cause you to make really bad decisions, and it can make you look really bad in front of other people's. Best thing to do when you start to feel impulsive is go for a walk. You need fresh air. That's what you need. You need fresh air. Get out, stop your car, find some place where you can, and just go for a walk. Get out of your office, go for a walk, and ask yourself, why am I being so impulsive on this situation? And then once again, ask yourself, what's the root cause in this? Next is deceit. Now, deceit, this is a lid, and I see this all the time, and we've seen this in the financial industries. We've seen this with Bernie Madoff. We've seen this over and over again. The ego wants to cover things up and practice deceit. And it thinks that it's protecting you because it can't foresee the shadowing of what's going to happen when you get caught. And this is a lid. A lot of people, I've seen people self-sabotage their marriages with affairs just because the marriage was going so well and they could not handle it. They got an upper limit. I've seen people, embezzle money. I've seen people do all kinds of deceit based off of them not understanding that their thermostat and they can have abundance and it go more. You will self-sabotage a lot of things in your life based off of this lid of deceit. And you need to watch that. Why am I wanting to be deceitful? Long term, what does this look like? Ask that question. Short term, it's awesome. Long term, it's death, mayhem. It's no good. Next is jealousy. And I see this, and I'm not talking like jealousy in relationships, which we can talk about that, but what I see, especially in leaders and in this Instagram world that we're in, is comparison. We compare ourselves. And it's a form of jealousy to compare yourself. Why don't I have Gucci head to toe when I'm 22 years old? Why am I not like this influencer? Why don't I have this cool car? Why does this person seem like they're getting promoted ahead of me? Oh, I hate them. All they do is blah, 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 and you're just spewing hate, talking bad about somebody because you're jealous. And then you create enemies, don't you? With jealousy, we always got to have an enemy, and then we always play the victim. But what happens is we become the victimizer. So we start out as a victim. Oh, my God, I can't believe this person's doing this to me, blah, blah, blah. We create an enemy, and then before long, we're talking shit about them, trying to destroy them in front of everybody else. So they're actually become the victim. And then lastly is anger. Anger comes in many forms. This is not just a masculine trait. I've seen so many people get angry, and in that anger, they say the most horrific things that they know they do not mean, especially to those that they love. I've seen so many leaders get angry at someone and say very hurtful things to them, and then wonder why they had a bad month. Wonder why they're looking for another job. When you respect somebody and love somebody, and you become self-aware enough to catch these before you start dropping all these bombs, whether it's an anger bomb, a jealousy bomb, a deceit bomb, an impulsiveness bomb, an impatience, a denial, or a fearful bomb, any of these lids. When you begin to respect and love somebody enough that you can be self-aware, you can say, this relationship is so valuable that the words that I say, I need to make sure that I'm saying them in love and in truth, and that I'm bringing light to everything that I do, that I'm bringing love, unconditional love. And what does that look like, Jason? Well, it's because the opposite of fear is love. The opposite of anger, I think, is love. The opposite of jealousy is love. The opposite of deceit, impulsiveness, denial, impatience, all these lids, the opposite of that is loving. Loving yourself first by catching it, forgiving it, accepting it. I laugh at it. I'm like, oh my goodness, here's a fear ULP sneaking on up. Here's a jealousy ULP. Oh, I'm getting jealous over this person because they appear better than me, or I'm thinking that they're better than me based off of their best pictures ever on Instagram, whatever it may be. Oh, here's me trying to cover something up and be deceitful because I don't want to have an honest conversation because I'm afraid it's going to make me look bad. So now you can have combinations of, I'm being fearful and I'm being deceitful and I'm being impulsive. And then that 3 combos, that'll KO you. So I encourage you guys, look at these lids, understand them, become more self-aware, and you will realize that these emotions that you're having, these negative emotions that you're having, they're not as bad as they appear. They're just an advocate. They're not a judge.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Aware Leader Podcast with host Jason Rigby. We hope this episode has inspired you to unleash your full potential and embrace your inner leadership. By expanding your consciousness, you can transform your mind, body, and soul and become the remarkable leader you were always meant to be. If you found this episode valuable, Please share it with your loved ones and help us expand our community. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you join us again on the Self-Aware Leader Podcast.